Layla's hands trembled as she clutched the cardboard box containing her few belongings from the mansion. The security guard's grip on her arm was unnecessarily tight, his fingers digging into her skin as he escorted her through the marble foyer she had cleaned every morning for the past 6 months. "Please," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I didn't take anything. I swear I didn't." "Save it for the police," Mrs. Castellano snapped, her perfectly manicured hand gesturing dismissively. The matriarch's cold eyes held nothing but contempt as she stood beside her daughter-in-law, Victoria, who wore a satisfied smirk. "We have security footage of you entering my son's private office. My diamond bracelet disappeared that same day." Layla's heart hammered against her ribs. She had entered Mr. Castellano's office, but only to clean it, as she did every Tuesday morning. The bracelet. She had never even seen it. "I clean that office every week," Layla managed, fighting back tears that would only make her look more guilty. "That's my job. I would never—" "Of course you'd say that," Victoria interrupted, her voice dripping with disdain. She stepped closer, her expensive perfume making Layla's eyes water. "Girls like you always do. You think we don't know what you people are really after when you work in homes like this?" The racist implication hung in the air like poison. Layla felt her face burn with humiliation and rage, but she kept her mouth shut. She needed this job. Her daughter Mia's medication cost $800 a month, and she was already behind on rent. "Mr. Castellano isn't even here to—" Layla started. "My son is in Chicago on business." The elder Mrs. Castellano cut her off. "And when he returns, he'll agree with our decision. You're fired, effective immediately. Be grateful we're not pressing charges." As the guard shoved her toward the door, Layla caught a glimpse of her reflection in one of the massive mirrors lining the hallway. She barely recognized herself, eyes red-rimmed, uniform wrinkled from being searched, dignity stripped away like the job she desperately needed. What she didn't know was that Julian Castellano was already on his private jet, cutting his trip short after receiving an urgent call. And what none of them knew was that he had installed his own hidden cameras throughout the mansion weeks ago, cameras that captured everything. If you want to discover what those hidden cameras revealed and how Julian Castellano's return changed everything, subscribe to the channel and leave a comment telling us where you're watching from. Every view helps bring more stories like this one. Now, let's go back to where it all began. 3 months earlier, the bus dropped Layla off 6 blocks from the Castellano estate at 5:47 a.m., just as it did every weekday. She clutched her second-hand coat tighter against the October chill, her breath forming small clouds in the pre-dawn darkness. The walk from the bus stop to the mansion gates gave her 13 minutes to mentally prepare for another day in a world that felt like a different planet from her own. Her apartment in South Brooklyn, a cramped one-bedroom she shared with her 7-year-old daughter Mia, could have fit inside the Castellano mansion's foyer 3 times over. The rent was still $1,200 a month, and with Mia's medical bills piling up, Layla worked 3 jobs to keep their heads above water. The Castellano position was her lifeline, $18 an hour, 5 days a week, 7 hours a day. It was barely enough, but it was something. She pressed her thumb to the security scanner at the service entrance, and the heavy gate clicked open. The kitchen staff entrance led directly to the basement level, where she stored her coat and bag in a small locker before changing into the crisp grey uniform all household staff wore. "You're early again," Maria, the head cook, commented as she prepped vegetables for the family's breakfast. The older Italian woman had been kind to Layla from day one, treating her like a person rather than invisible help. "Bus schedule," Layla replied with a small smile, tying her hair back into a neat bun. "Better early than late." Maria's knowing look said she understood more than Layla wanted to admit. "Mrs. Castellano, the younger one, she's been in a mood lately. Tread carefully upstairs." Layla nodded, swallowing the familiar knot of anxiety. Victoria Castellano, Julian's wife, had made it clear from Layla's first day that she found the household staff beneath her notice, except when she wanted to criticize. The elder Mrs. Castellano, Julian's mother, was only marginally better, her old money snobbery wrapped in a thin veneer of politeness. But Julian himself, Layla had barely seen him. He was always traveling, always in meetings, always somewhere else. The few times she'd glimpsed him, a tall figure in an impeccable suit disappearing into his study, or stepping into one of the black SUVs that waited in the circular driveway, he'd seemed more myth than man. She started her day the way she always did, second floor hallway first, then the guest bedrooms, working her way methodically through the east wing. The morning sun was just beginning to filter through the massive windows when she heard raised voices coming from the master suite. "Don't care what your mother thinks, Julian. I want to redecorate the entire third floor, and I want it done before the charity gala." Layla froze mid-step, her cleaning cart suddenly feeling too loud, too intrusive. "Victoria!" Julian Castellano's voice was quieter than his wife's, but it carried an edge that made Layla's skin prickle. "We discussed this. The answer is no. You discussed it. I didn't agree to anything. The third floor remains as it is." There was a crash, something glass hitting a wall, and Layla instinctively stepped back. She shouldn't be here. She shouldn't be hearing this. "You're never here anyway." Victoria's voice rose to a shriek. "Always off playing mob boss with your little—" "Careful." One word spoken so softly that Layla barely heard it, but the threat in it was unmistakable. Silence fell. Layla held her breath. When the master suite door suddenly swung open, Layla's heart stopped. Julian Castellano stood in the doorway, and for the first time she saw him clearly. He was devastating, over 6 feet tall, with dark hair swept back from a face that could have been carved from marble, sharp jaw, high cheekbones, and eyes so dark they were almost black. A perfectly tailored charcoal suit hugged broad shoulders, and she caught a glimpse of black ink on his neck just above his collar. He radiated power and danger in equal measure, his eyes locked onto hers. Layla forgot how to breathe. She should look away, should apologize for being there, should disappear, but she couldn't move. "You're new," he said. His voice was like smoke, smooth and dark and curling around her. No, sir," she managed. "I've been here 3 months, Layla Patterson." Something flickered in his expression. Surprise, maybe, that she'd spoken at all. Most of the staff avoided eye contact with him entirely. 3 months, he repeated slowly, his gaze traveling over her face as if memorizing it. "And I'm only seeing you now." "You travel a lot, sir." The corner of his mouth twitched. It wasn't quite a smile, but it was something. "Julian, not sir." Before Layla could respond, Victoria appeared behind him, her face flushed with anger. When she saw Layla, her expression morphed into pure contempt. "Don't you have work to do?" Victoria snapped. "Or do we pay you to stand around eavesdropping?" "I apologize, ma'am." Layla ducked her head, shame burning through her. "I'll move to another floor." She turned to go, but Julian's voice stopped her. "Finish this floor first. It's your assigned area." It wasn't a question. Layla nodded without looking back at him and pushed her cart down the hallway as quickly as she could without running. Her hands were shaking so badly that she had to grip the cart handle to steady them. Behind her, she heard Victoria hiss something venomous, but Julian's response was lost as they moved back into the master suite and closed the door. Layla leaned against the wall of the guest bedroom she'd escaped into, pressing a hand to her racing heart. She'd just locked eyes with Julian Castellano, the man whispered about in every corner of the city, the name that made hardened criminals look over their shoulders. The media called him a legitimate businessman, but everyone knew the truth. He ran the most powerful crime family on the East Coast, and for just a moment, he had looked at her like she was more than invisible. 2 weeks passed before Layla saw Julian again. She fell into her routine, early mornings, methodical cleaning, invisible existence. Victoria had increased her criticisms, finding fault with everything from the way Layla folded towels to the angle of the vacuum cleaner lines in the carpet. But Layla endured it silently, thinking of Mia and the medication they needed. It was a Tuesday morning when everything shifted. Layla was cleaning Julian's private office, a room she was only allowed to enter on Tuesdays between 6 and 7 a.m., when he was supposedly at his early morning meeting downtown. The office was masculine and intimidating. Dark wood, leather furniture, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves filled with everything from Italian literature to financial reports. She was dusting the massive mahogany desk when she noticed the photograph in a silver frame. A little girl, maybe 9 or 10 years old, with Julian's dark eyes and a shy smile. Layla had never heard anyone mention that Julian had a daughter. Her name was Isabella. Layla spun around so fast she knocked over the photograph. Julian stood in the doorway and her heart plummeted. She wasn't supposed to be here when he was home. "I'm so sorry, Sir Julian. I didn't know you were—" She fumbled to pick up the frame, checking frantically for damage. "I'm only supposed to clean in here on Tuesday mornings, and it's Tuesday, and I thought, breathe, Layla. She froze. He remembered her name. Julian walked into the office, and Layla became acutely aware of how small the space felt with him in it. He moved with the fluid grace of a predator, every step deliberate. When he was close enough that she could smell his cologne, something expensive and woodsy, he gently took the photograph from her trembling hands. Was? The word slipped out before Layla could stop it. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have. Leukemia. She was 11. Julian's voice was flat, emotionless, but his fingers tightened on the frame. 7 years ago. Layla's heart cracked. I'm so sorry. Why? He looked at her then, really looked at her, and she saw something raw in his eyes. You didn't know her, you don't know me. I know what it's like to be terrified of losing your child, Layla heard herself say. The words came out before she could think better of them. My daughter has a chronic condition. The medication, it's expensive. That's why I work 3 jobs. Silence stretched between them. Julian set the photograph back on his desk with careful precision. What's her name? Mia. She's 7. And her father. Layla's laugh was bitter. Gone before she was born. He didn't want the responsibility. Julian's jaw tightened. Idiota. The Italian word, spoken with such quiet fury, made something flutter in Layla's chest. She should leave. This conversation was too personal, too dangerous. She was the help. He was everything she wasn't. But Julian wasn't done. What condition? Juvenile diabetes. Type 1. The insulin is... Layla cut herself off. I'm sorry. You don't need to hear about my problems. I asked. 3 words that somehow felt like the most important anyone had said to her in years. Before Layla could respond, her phone buzzed in her uniform pocket. She normally kept it on silent during work hours, but Mia's school had permission to call in emergencies. The buzzing continued insistently. Answer it, Julian said. With shaking hands, Layla pulled out her phone. The school's number flashed on the screen. Hello? Miss Patterson, this is Nurse Chen at Mia's school. We need you to come pick her up. Her blood sugar dropped dangerously low and she's asking for you. The world tilted. I'm at work. I can't just leave. Ms. Patterson, Mia needs you now. We've given her glucose tablets, but she's very upset. Layla looked at Julian, panic rising in her throat. If she left work, Victoria would fire her. If she didn't go to Mia. Go. Julian's voice cut through her spiraling thoughts. But Mrs. Castellano works for me. Go to your daughter. Layla didn't wait for him to change his mind. She grabbed her phone and ran. The school was a 40-minute bus ride from the Castellano mansion. Layla made it in 35, jumping off 2 stops early and sprinting the rest of the way. By the time she burst into the nurse's office, her lungs were burning and tears were streaming down her face. Mia was sitting on the examination table, her small face pale and frightened. When she saw Layla, she burst into fresh tears. Mama! Layla gathered her daughter into her arms, checking her over with practiced efficiency, even as she held her close. I'm here, baby. I'm here. Are you okay? I forgot to eat my snack, Mia sobbed into Layla's shoulder. I'm sorry, Mama. I forgot. Shh, it's okay. You're okay now. Layla looked at Nurse Chen over Mia's head. Can I take her home? Her levels are stabilizing. But yes, keep her home for the rest of the day and monitor her closely. The bus ride back to their apartment was quiet. Mia fell asleep against Layla's side, exhausted from the blood sugar crash. Layla stroked her daughter's hair and tried not to think about the job she'd just lost. She'd been home for maybe an hour when there was a knock on her apartment door. Through the peephole, Layla saw a man in a black suit. Her stomach dropped. Had Victoria sent someone to collect her keys, to threaten her? Ms. Patterson, the man said through the door, his voice professional. I'm Marco, Mr. Castellano's driver. He sent me to check on you and your daughter. Layla opened the door slowly, keeping the chain lock engaged. What? Marco held up a large bag. He thought you might need supplies and he wanted me to give you this. He held out an envelope. With trembling fingers, Layla unchained the door and took the items. Inside the bag were boxes of the exact insulin and glucose tablets Mia used, enough for at least 2 months. The envelope contained 20 crisp $100 bills. I can't accept this, Layla whispered. Mr. Castellano insisted. He also wanted me to tell you that your job is secure. Mrs. Victoria Castellano has been informed of his position on the matter. Layla stared at the money in her hands. $2,000. It was more than she made in a month at the Castellano house. It was the difference between keeping the lights on and eviction. "Why?" she asked. Marco's expression softened slightly. "Mr. Castellano said you reminded him of what matters, whatever that means." After Marco left, Layla sat on her worn couch and cried. She cried for the kindness she hadn't expected, for the relief of not losing her job, for the way Julian Castellano had looked at his daughter's photograph like his heart was still broken 7 years later. She cried because for the first time in years someone had seen her, really seen her, and that terrified her more than anything else. The dynamic shifted after that day. Julian was suddenly always there, or at least it felt that way. He'd appear in hallways she was cleaning, in rooms she was dusting, always with some plausible reason, but his eyes always finding her. He never touched her, never said anything inappropriate. But the way he looked at her, like she was something precious he was afraid to break, made her skin feel too tight and her heart beat too fast. Victoria noticed. Of course she noticed. "I see the way you look at my husband," she hissed one morning, cornering Layla in the laundry room. "You think because he gave you some charity handout that you matter. You're nothing. You'll always be nothing." Layla kept her eyes down, hands gripping the laundry basket until her knuckles went white. "I don't look at Mr. Castellano any particular way, ma'am. I'm just doing my job." "You're a liar." Victoria stepped closer, her voice dropping to a venomous whisper. "And if you think for 1 second that a man like Julian would ever want someone like you, you're even more pathetic than I thought. He married me, old money, breeding, class, what are you? A maid from the ghetto with a bastard child." Each word was designed to cut, and they did. But Layla had survived worse than Victoria Castellano's cruelty. She looked up, meeting the other woman's eyes directly. "You're right, ma'am. A man like Mr. Castellano would never want someone like me. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have work to do." She brushed past Victoria and walked out with her head high, even though her hands were shaking. She didn't see Julian standing just outside the doorway, having heard every word. Didn't see the way his expression turned to ice. That evening, Layla was finishing up in the library when Julian appeared in the doorway. It was past 7 p.m. She was supposed to have left an hour ago, but she'd stayed late to make up for the time she'd taken off for Mia's school emergency. "You should have gone home," Julian said. Layla straightened, trying not to notice how good he looked with his tie loosened and his jacket off. "Just finishing up." "Layla." He said her name like a caress, and she felt it in her bones. "What Victoria said to you today. You heard that." Humiliation flooded through her. Every word. Julian moved into the library, closing the door behind him. "And she was wrong. About everything." Layla's breath caught. "Mr. Castellano." "Julian." He stopped a few feet away from her, close enough that she could see the gold flecks in his dark eyes. "Say my name." "Julian." It came out as barely a whisper. "Victoria and I." He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. "Our marriage is a business arrangement. It has been from the beginning. My mother arranged it to merge 2 families. I was grieving Isabella, and I didn't care about anything. I signed the papers, and I've regretted it every day since." Layla knew she should stop him. This conversation was crossing every line that existed between them, but she couldn't make herself move. "You asked me once why I travel so much," Julian continued. "It's because I can't stand to be in this house. Can't stand the pretense, the emptiness. But then you started working here, and suddenly—" He shook his head. "Suddenly I found myself coming up with excuses to be home." "Don't." Layla's voice broke. "Please don't say things like that." "Why not?" "Because I'm nobody. I'm exactly what Victoria said. A maid from Brooklyn with a daughter and debts and no prospects. You're—" She gestured helplessly at him, at the library, at everything the Castellano name represented. "You're you. And that matters?" Julian moved closer and Layla's back hit the bookshelf. "You think I care about any of that?" "You should." "Layla." He raised his hand slowly, giving her every opportunity to move away, and brushed his fingers against her cheek. The touch was feather-light, reverent. "I haven't felt anything real in 7 years, not until I saw you standing in my hallway trying so hard to be invisible. Do you know what that did to me?" She was trembling now, caught between terror and longing. "This can't happen." "I know." But he didn't move away. Neither did she. "Your wife is not my wife in any way that matters. We sleep in separate rooms. We live separate lives. The only thing binding us is a piece of paper and my mother's expectations." And your world would destroy me, Layla whispered. You know it would. Julian's thumb traced her jawline, and she couldn't stop the small sound that escaped her throat. I would never let anything hurt you. Do you understand that? Nothing touches you. Not Victoria. Not my mother. Not anyone. Julian. The library door opened. They sprang apart, but not fast enough. Victoria stood in the doorway, her face contorted with rage. Behind her, Julian's mother wore an expression of cold fury. I knew it, Victoria spat. I knew you were spreading your legs for him. Victoria, Julian's voice was deadly quiet. Don't you dare defend her. Victoria turned on her husband. She's a maid, Julian, a nobody, and you're willing to humiliate me for her. You humiliate yourself, Julian said coldly. And if you ever speak to Layla that way again, you'll what? Victoria laughed, the sound shrill and manic. Divorce me? Your mother would never allow it. The scandal alone would be worth it. The words fell into the room like stones. For even Victoria fell silent. Julian's mother stepped forward, her voice calm but laced with venom. Julian, this is absurd. Whatever infatuation this is, it ends now. We'll terminate Miss Patterson's employment with a generous severance and— No! Julian's voice cracked like a whip. Layla stays. Victoria, you'll leave by morning. I'll have my lawyers draw up divorce papers. Layla couldn't breathe. This wasn't happening. This couldn't be happening. Julian, don't, she managed. Please. I'll quit. I'll leave. Just don't— You're not going anywhere, he said without looking at her. His eyes were locked on his mother. And this discussion is over. You'll regret this, his mother said icily. That girl will destroy everything we've built. You already destroyed it, Julian replied. The day you convinced me to marry someone I didn't love while I was still grieving my daughter. He turned to Layla then, his expression softening. Wait for me in my office, please. Layla didn't remember walking to Julian's office. She only remembered sitting in the leather chair, her entire body numb with shock, while shouting echoed through the mansion's halls. When Julian finally appeared, it was past midnight. He looked exhausted, his shirt untucked, his hair disheveled from running his hands through it, but his eyes, when they found hers, were determined. It's done, he said quietly. Victoria's gone. My mother's threatening to disown me. And I don't care about any of it. Layla stood up, her legs unsteady. You can't do this. Your family, your business, everything you've built means nothing without something real in it. Julian crossed to her, cupping her face in both hands. Do you understand what I'm saying? I want something real, Layla. I want you. You don't know me. Then let me know you. Let me into your life. Let me meet Mia. Let me prove that this isn't some fantasy. His thumb stroked her cheekbones and she felt tears spilling over. I'm not asking you to marry me tomorrow. I'm asking for a chance. People will say terrible things about me, about us. Let them. They'll say I'm a gold digger, that I seduced you. I don't care what they say. Julian leaned his forehead against hers. I care what you say. Tell me you feel this too. Tell me I'm not insane. Layla closed her eyes, breathing him in. She was terrified. She was falling. She was doing both at the same time. You're not insane, she whispered. I feel it too, and it scares me to death. Julian's lips brushed against hers, soft and questioning. She answered by rising on her toes and kissing him back, her hands fisting in his shirt. The kiss was gentle at first, almost reverent, but it quickly deepened into something desperate and real. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Julian rested his forehead against hers again. I will protect you, he murmured, from everything and everyone, including my own family if necessary. You have my word. And despite everything, despite the impossibility of it all, Layla believed him. The following weeks were a whirlwind. Julian's divorce from Victoria made headlines, not the real reasons, but the sanitized version his lawyers spun. Irreconcilable differences. The media speculated wildly, but Julian refused all interviews and issued a single statement saying his personal life was off limits. Layla quit her job at the mansion despite Julian's protests, unwilling to be the help while dating her former employer. She kept her other two jobs, morning shifts at a diner and weekend work at a dry cleaner, because she needed the independence, needed to know she could still take care of herself and Mia. Julian met Mia on a Saturday afternoon at a park. Layla had been terrified about how her daughter would react to her dating someone, but Mia took one look at Julian and asked if he liked butterflies. Butterflies? Julian had crouched down to Mia's level, his expression serious. Mama says that butterflies are proof that beautiful things can come from hard times. I think that's cool. Julian had looked up at Layla then, something blazing in his eyes. Your mama is very wise. And yes, I like butterflies very much. They spent the afternoon flying kites, and Layla fell a little bit more in love watching Julian teach her daughter how to keep the kite steady in the wind, his patience infinite, his smile genuine. But peace was fragile. 2 months into their relationship, Layla arrived home from her diner shift to find her apartment door slightly ajar. Panic seized her. Mia was at school, thank God, but all of Layla's instincts screamed danger. She pushed the door open carefully. Her apartment had been destroyed. Furniture overturned, cushions slashed, her clothes ripped from the closet and shredded. Spray painted across the wall in red were 3 words: gold-digging whore. Layla's knees gave out. She sank to the floor amid the destruction, her phone falling from nerveless fingers. This was Victoria. It had to be. Or Julian's mother. Or someone from his world who wanted to punish her for daring to be with him. She didn't know how long she sat there before strong arms lifted her from the floor. Tesoro. Julian's voice was rough with fury and fear. I'm here. I've got you. How did you... The building manager called me when he saw your door open. I had my number listed as your emergency contact. He was already on his phone, barking orders. I want every camera within 3 blocks checked. I want to know who did this, and I want them found. Now. Layla grabbed his arm. Julian, no violence. Please. His jaw was granite. Someone violated your home, threatened you. And if you retaliate, it proves everything they say about you. About us. Layla cupped his face, forcing him to look at her. Please. I just want to take Mia and feel safe. That's all. Julian pulled her against his chest, his heart thundering beneath her ear. You're both coming to stay with me. I have a penthouse downtown. It's secure, private. You'll both be safe there. I can't just move in with you. We've only been together 2 months. I don't care if it's been 2 days. You're not staying in this building another night. Julian's voice brooked no argument. We'll take it as slow as you need in every other way. Separate bedrooms, whatever you want. But you and Mia will be somewhere I know you're protected. Layla wanted to argue, wanted to insist on her independence, but the sight of her shredded clothes and the vicious words on her wall made the decision for her. Okay, she whispered. Okay. The penthouse was stunning, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, modern furnishings and more space than Layla knew what to do with. But what made her cry was the bedroom Julian had prepared for Mia, painted in soft purples and yellows, with a butterfly mobile hanging above the bed, and a bookshelf already filled with age-appropriate books. When did you do this? Layla asked, her voice thick with emotion. I've been preparing it for weeks, Julian admitted, hoping you'd eventually agree to stay. Mia was thrilled with her new room, especially when she discovered the massive window seat that overlooked the park. She adapted to the change with the resilience of children, seemingly unaware of the danger that had precipitated the move. But Layla knew, and she saw the way Julian's security team, discreet but ever-present, monitored every entrance, every visitor, every potential threat. 3 days after they moved in, Julian's head of security, Marco, requested a meeting. Julian called Layla into his home office, his expression grim. We found who vandalized your apartment, Marco said without preamble. It wasn't Mrs. Victoria Castellano. Layla's stomach dropped. Then who? Marco pulled up a photo on his tablet. A woman Layla had never seen before. Blonde, beautiful, impeccably dressed. Sabrina Moretti, daughter of the Moretti crime family. She's been trying to arrange a marriage between herself and Julian for the past 5 years. Julian's voice was ice. I've told her family repeatedly that I'm not interested. Apparently, she's decided that Ms. Patterson is the obstacle, Marco continued. Our cameras caught her hiring the men who destroyed the apartment. She's also been spreading rumors through society circles, trying to damage your reputation. Layla closed her eyes. So this is my life now, being targeted by jealous mob princesses. No, Julian's hand covered hers. This is handled. I'm meeting with the Moretti family tomorrow to make it crystal clear that any further action against you will be considered a declaration of war. Julian, I mean it, Layla. His eyes burned into hers. You are under my protection. That means something in my world. Sabrina violated that protection. There will be consequences. That night, Layla couldn't sleep. She stood at the window of her bedroom, separate from Julian's as promised, and looked out at the glittering city below. She'd gone from a cramped Brooklyn apartment to a luxury penthouse, from invisible to the center of a mob boss's attention. A soft knock made her turn. Julian stood in the doorway wearing only pajama pants, his tattooed chest on display. The ink spread across his left pectoral and down his ribs, intricate artwork that she'd glimpsed but never fully seen. "Can't sleep?" he asked. "Too much in my head." He crossed to her, stopping just close enough that she could feel his warmth. "Want to talk about it? I keep thinking about how surreal this all is. 2 months ago, I was your maid. Now I'm living in your penthouse and you're threatening mob families over me. Is that a complaint?" Layla looked up at him. "It's terrifying and wonderful, and I don't know how to reconcile those two things." Julian traced her jaw with his fingers, the touch achingly gentle. "I know this world is dangerous. I know what I'm asking you to navigate. But Layla, I haven't felt alive in 7 years. Not until you. What if I'm not strong enough for this? You're the strongest person I know." He pulled her close, wrapping his arms around her. "You work 3 jobs to keep your daughter healthy. You hold your head high when people try to tear you down. You survived poverty and abandonment, and you still have the capacity to be kind. That's not weakness, Tesoro. That's steel." Layla pressed her face against his chest, breathing him in. "I'm falling in love with you, and it scares me." She felt him still. Then his hand came up to cradle the back of her head. "I'm already in love with you," he murmured against her hair. "Have been since the day you told me about Mia with such fierce pride. You can take all the time you need to catch up." Layla tilted her head back, and Julian kissed her. It was different from their first kiss, deeper, more certain, a promise of something permanent. When they finally broke apart, Julian rested his forehead against hers. "Stay," he whispered. "Not just tonight. Stay. Build a life with me. Let me be there for you and Mia. Let me love you both." Layla knew the answer before he finished asking. It was insane. It was reckless. It was the best decision she'd ever make. "Okay," she breathed. "Okay, yes." The smile that broke across Julian's face was worth every risk. The next morning, everything fell apart. Layla woke to the sound of shouting in the living room. She pulled on a robe and rushed out to find Julian in a heated phone conversation, Marco hovering nearby with a tablet. "What happened?" she asked. Julian ended the call and turned to her, his expression murderous. "The Morettis claim they had nothing to do with Sabrina's actions. They're saying she acted alone and they've handled it." Something in his tone made Layla's blood run cold. Handled it how? They sent her to their compound in Sicily, essentially exiled her. Julian ran a hand through his hair. "But that's not the problem. Someone leaked photos of us to the press, you, me, and Mia at the park. You moving into the penthouse. Everything." Marco handed Layla the tablet. Her stomach turned as she scrolled through the headlines. Mafia boss ditches society wife for Maid. From rags to riches, gold digger, or true love. Castellano scandal. Photos reveal secret family. The photos were everywhere, some clearly taken with telephoto lenses. Mia's face was visible in several, her identity now known to anyone with an internet connection. "Mia," Layla whispered. "Oh God, Julian, her face. I'm handling it." Julian was already making calls, his voice sharp and commanding. "I want every outlet that published photos of the child contacted. I want them taken down, and I want legal action started. Now." But the damage was done. Within hours, reporters were camped outside the building. Layla's phone, which she'd foolishly not changed, was flooded with calls and messages. Her mother, who hadn't spoken to her in 2 years, left a voicemail demanding money. Former co-workers sold stories about her to tabloids. The worst call came from Mia's school. "Ms. Patterson, I'm afraid we need to discuss Mia's safety. We've had reporters attempting to gain access to the building, claiming to be family members. We think it might be best if Mia stays home for a few days until this situation calms down." Layla hung up and broke down. Julian found her in their bedroom. She'd unconsciously started thinking of it as their bedroom, even though they maintained separate spaces, curled up on the floor, sobbing. "They're going after her," Layla choked out. "My baby. They're treating her like a story, like she's public property because of me." Julian pulled her into his arms, his own fury barely contained. "This ends today. I'm calling a press conference." "No, that'll just make it worse. It'll make it clear that you and Mia are off limits." Julian's voice was absolute. "I'm going to tell them the truth. All of it. That I fell in love with you, that Victoria and I were never really married in any way that mattered, that you and Mia are my family now, and I'm going to make it very clear what happens to anyone who comes near either of you. Julian, your reputation, fuck my reputation. He cupped her face, forcing her to meet his eyes. You think I care what society says about me? I'm a criminal, Layla. I've made peace with that, but you and Mia, you're innocent in all of this, and I will burn down anyone who tries to hurt you. The press conference was scheduled for that afternoon at one of Julian's legitimate business properties, a hotel in Midtown Manhattan. Layla insisted on being there, despite Julian's protests. If I hide, it looks like I have something to be ashamed of, she said firmly. I'm not ashamed of loving you. I'm not ashamed of my past. Let them see me. Julian looked at her like she'd just offered him the world. You're incredible. I'm terrified. That too. He kissed her forehead. But we do this together. The press conference room was packed with reporters, cameras and flashing lights. Julian stood at the podium, looking every inch the powerful man he was in a dark suit. Layla standing slightly behind him in a simple but elegant dress Julian had insisted on buying her. I'll make this brief, Julian began, his voice carrying across the room. Yes, I'm in a relationship with Layla Patterson. Yes, she worked as a housekeeper in my family's home. Yes, I ended my marriage to Victoria Castellano to be with her. No, none of this is anyone's business except ours. A reporter shouted a question, but Julian held up a hand. I'm not finished. Layla is a single mother who worked 3 jobs to support her daughter. She's one of the strongest, most dignified people I've ever met. The fact that some of you have chosen to vilify her for daring to be in a relationship with me says more about society's prejudices than it does about her character. He paused, his eyes scanning the room. But here's what you all need to understand. Layla and her daughter Mia are under my protection. That's not a request or a suggestion. Any reporter, photographer or outlet that publishes photos of Mia, approaches her school, or harasses either of them will face legal consequences. And believe me when I say I have the resources to make those consequences severe. Another reporter tried to interject, but Julian's voice cut through like a blade. I'm also aware of the rumors circulating about Layla's motivations. So let me be clear. I pursued her. I fell in love with her. I asked her to be in my life. If anyone is a gold digger in this relationship, it's me, because what she has to offer is worth more than any amount of money. He turned slightly, extending his hand to Layla. She took it, stepping forward to stand beside him. Any questions directed at Layla will be screened and answered only if she chooses to respond, Julian continued. And I would suggest you think very carefully about how you phrase those questions. A female reporter raised her hand. Ms. Patterson, how do you respond to accusations that you seduced Mr. Castellano while working in his home? Layla took a breath, feeling Julian's hand tighten around hers. I didn't seduce anyone. Julian and I developed feelings for each other over time. It wasn't planned and it wasn't manipulative. It just happened, and yes, I worked in his home. I'm not ashamed of that. I'm not ashamed of any job I've held to take care of my daughter. What about the age difference? Another reporter called out. He's 42 and you're 28. We're both adults, Layla replied steadily, and age has nothing to do with compatibility or love. Ms. Patterson, do you have any comment on Victoria Castellano's statement that you destroyed her marriage? Layla felt Julian tense beside her, but she squeezed his hand. I didn't destroy anything that wasn't already broken. Julian's marriage to Victoria ended because they weren't happy together. My presence in his life just made him realize he deserved to find happiness. The questions continued, some respectful, many invasive, but Layla held her ground. Julian, a solid presence beside her. When one reporter asked if she was using her daughter to trap a rich man, Julian's voice went arctic. This press conference is over. Thank you. He guided Layla off the stage, his security team forming a barrier between them and the shouting reporters. In the car on the way back to the penthouse, Layla finally let herself shake. Julian pulled her against him, pressing kisses to her temple. You were perfect, he murmured. So strong. I wanted to punch that last reporter. Julian laughed, the sound rough but genuine. So did I. Marco had to physically stop me. They picked up Mia from the penthouse where she'd been staying with a trusted nanny. Another thing Layla was still adjusting to, having people to help with childcare. Mia threw herself at both of them. Mama, Did you see yourself on TV? You looked so pretty. Layla exchanged a look with Julian over Mia's head. They'd hoped to keep the press conference from her, but of course she'd seen it. Did the bad people stop being mean? Mia asked, her voice small. Julian crouched down to her level. The bad people are going to leave us alone now, Piccola. I promise. You, your mama, and I, we're a family, and I protect my family. Even though I'm not really yours? Mia's question was innocent, but it hit like a freight train. Julian looked at Layla, something vulnerable in his eyes. Then he turned back to Mia. Would you like to be? Really mine, I mean. If your mama agrees, I'd like to adopt you. Make it official. Layla's breath caught. Julian hadn't discussed this with her, but looking at Mia's face light up with hope, she couldn't find it in herself to be upset. Really? Mia breathed. I could call you Daddy? If you want to. Mia launched herself at Julian, wrapping her small arms around his neck. Yes, 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 yes. Over Mia's head, Julian mouthed to Layla, Is this okay? Layla nodded, tears streaming down her face. More than okay. That night, after Mia was asleep, Layla found Julian on the penthouse balcony, staring out at the city lights. You didn't have to offer to adopt her, Layla said softly. I wanted to. I should have asked you first. Julian. Layla turned him to face her. I love you. I love that you love my daughter enough to want to be her father. I love everything about this insane, impossible situation we're in. Julian pulled her close, his arms wrapping around her waist. Marry me. Layla's heart stopped. What? Marry me, Julian repeated, his voice steady and sure. Not because of the press or the scandal or any external reason. Marry me because I love you and I want to build a life with you. Because I want Mia to be my daughter legally and in every way that matters. Because I can't imagine my future without both of you in it. Julian, we've only been together for 2 months. I don't care. I've lived 42 years, Layla. I know what I want. And I want you. He cupped her face in his hands. But if you need more time, I'll wait. I'll wait as long as you need. Layla thought about everything they'd been through. The obstacles, the scandals, the threats. She thought about how Julian had protected her, respected her, loved her daughter as his own. She thought about the future, uncertain and probably chaotic, but filled with this man who looked at her like she was his entire world. Ask me again in 6 months, she said finally. Let us have time to just be together without the pressure. Let Mia get used to this new normal. And then ask me again. Julian smiled, pressing his forehead to hers. 6 months, I can do that. And Julian? The answer's going to be yes. I just need the time to be sure we're both ready. I'm already sure, he murmured, kissing her softly. But I'll wait. For you, I'll wait forever. 1 year later, Layla stood in the bedroom she now shared with Julian, truly shared, no more separate spaces, and adjusted the simple white dress she'd chosen for their wedding. It wasn't a big ceremony, just close friends, Marco and the security team who'd become like family, and of course Mia, who was vibrating with excitement in her flower girl dress. The past year had been transformative. The media attention had eventually died down, replaced by new scandals. Julian had legally adopted Mia 6 months ago, and watching her daughter call him Daddy never failed to make Layla's heart swell. They'd found a balance. Layla had gone back to school, getting a degree in nursing, something she'd always wanted but never had the resources for. Julian supported her completely, even hiring a nanny to help with Mia during Layla's study sessions. The penthouse had become a home. Mia's butterfly room was filled with the artwork she created, and the kitchen, once pristine and unused, now held evidence of their lives together. Mia's drawings on the fridge, Julian's coffee mug always in the same spot, Layla's nursing textbooks stacked on the counter. Julian's mother had eventually come around, especially after meeting Mia. It was hard to resist a 7-year-old who asked intelligent questions about Italian architecture and giggled at everything. Victoria had remarried within 6 months, apparently unbothered by the divorce once the settlement came through. "Mama, you look like a princess." Mia burst into the room, her eyes wide. Layla smoothed down her daughter's hair. "And you look like the most beautiful flower girl in the world." "Daddy's really nervous," Mia confided. "Marco said he's never seen Daddy pace before." Layla laughed. Julian, calm, collected, dangerous Julian, was nervous. The thought filled her with affection. The ceremony was held in the penthouse, overlooking the city where they'd found each other. As Layla walked toward Julian, who stood waiting in an impeccable black suit. She saw his eyes glisten with emotion. When they exchanged vows, Julian's voice was steady and sure. "Layla, you walked into my life when I'd forgotten what it meant to feel. You reminded me that there's more to existence than power and business and emptiness. You gave me a family, a home, a reason to be better. I promise to love you, protect you, and stand beside you for the rest of my life." Layla's vows were simpler. "Julian, you saw me when I was invisible. You valued me when others dismissed me. You loved my daughter as your own. I promise to build a life with you filled with honesty, partnership, and love. Always." When they kissed, Mia cheered so loudly that everyone laughed. Later, at the reception, Layla found Julian on the balcony, taking a moment away from the celebration. "Hiding from your own wedding," she teased. "Just needed a minute to take it all in." He pulled her close, his arms encircling her waist. "A year ago, I was living in an empty mansion, going through the motions. Now I have you, Mia, a real family." "We have each other," Layla corrected, leaning back against his chest. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the city lights twinkle below them. Inside, they could hear Mia's laughter as Marco taught her some kind of complicated dance move. "I never thought I'd have this again," Julian murmured, his lips against her hair. "After Isabella died, I didn't think I deserved happiness. Didn't think I could feel this much for another child. Mia's lucky to have you as her father. I'm the lucky one." Julian turned her in his arms, his dark eyes intense. "You both saved me, Layla. In every way a person can be saved. Then we saved each other." Layla rose on her toes to kiss him. "Because I was drowning before you. Working myself to death, barely surviving. You gave us a chance at a real life." "No," Julian said softly. "You earned this life. Through your strength, your courage, your refusal to be diminished. I just had the privilege of being there when you allowed yourself to believe you deserved it." A year ago, Layla Patterson had been invisible, a maid in a mansion, working 3 jobs, surviving day by day. Now she was Layla Castellano, wife to a man who loved her fiercely, mother to a thriving daughter, and living a life she'd never dared to dream. The road hadn't been easy. There had been scandals, threats, and obstacles that seemed insurmountable. But standing on this balcony, wrapped in Julian's arms with their daughter's laughter echoing behind them, Layla knew one thing with absolute certainty. Some love stories aren't about perfection. They're about finding someone who sees you, really sees you, and chooses you anyway. They're about building something real from impossible circumstances. They're about being brave enough to reach for happiness even when the world tells you it's not meant for you. And this love story, it was just beginning. It was. Inside, Mia called out, "Mama, Daddy, come dance with me." Layla and Julian exchanged a look, one of those married couple looks that said everything without words, and went inside together, ready to dance with their daughter, to celebrate their family, and to embrace whatever the future held. Because together they could face anything. This story has reached its end. If it touched your heart in any way, please leave your like and share it with someone who also enjoys emotional stories. New stories are coming soon. Until next time.